You wake up tired. Not the tired that comes from a hard day at work. Not the tired that goes away after a good night of sleep. A different kind. A weight that's been sitting on your chest since before you can remember. And you've never had words for it. Because everyone around you wakes up fine, gets their coffee, and goes about their day like the world isn't pressing down on them the way it presses down on you. You've tried to explain it. You've stopped trying, because every time you tried to put it into words, the people listening got that look, that polite, distant look that told you they had no idea what you were describing. And after enough of those looks, you decided to just carry it quietly. What I want to tell you tonight is that you're not crazy. You're not weak. You're not depressed in the way the world means depressed. You're carrying a weight that belongs to one of the rarest groups of people walking the planet, and your spirit has been carrying it without your conscious mind ever knowing it was there. You are one of the 144,000, and you have no idea. My name is George, and before I go further, I want to be honest about something. I sat with this title for days before I started writing, because there's a specific person watching this, maybe several hundred of them scattered across this entire platform, who have walked through their whole life feeling like something was wrong with them, when actually, something was right with them. Something has been right with them since before they took their first breath, and nobody, in their 40 or 50 or 60 years of life, has ever turned to them and named it. I want to name it tonight. Let me start with what the carrying actually feels like, because if you're one of them, this is going to land in a way nothing else has landed in a long time. It feels like grief that doesn't belong to you. You'll be sitting in traffic, listening to a song that has nothing to do with anything in your life, and suddenly there are tears running down your face, and you don't know why. You'll be at a wedding, and instead of feeling pure joy for the couple, you'll feel this strange heaviness, like you're sensing something the rest of the room can't sense. You'll watch the news for 30 seconds and have to turn it off, because the weight of what you saw lands on you in a way it doesn't seem to land on anyone else. That's not oversensitivity. That's not anxiety. That's not you being dramatic. That's intercession happening through you, without your permission. Your spirit has been picking up assignments that your conscious mind never agreed to. It's been carrying prayers for people you've never met. It's been bearing burdens for cities you've never visited. It's been groaning in places too deep for language, exactly the way the Apostle Paul described in Romans, when he wrote about the Spirit interceding with groanings that cannot be uttered. He wasn't being poetic. He was describing what's happening inside you, right now, every day, whether or not you ever say a single intentional prayer about it. That's the carrying, and it's been happening since you were a child. I want you to think back. Were you the kid who cried at things other kids didn't cry at? Were you the one who felt the energy in the house before anyone said a word? Were you the one who knew which family member was hiding something painful, even when nobody had told you? Were you the one who couldn't sleep some nights for reasons you couldn't name, while the rest of the household slept fine? That was not your imagination. That was the carrying starting early. That was your spirit, even as a child, already loaded with assignments your little mind couldn't process. And nobody around you had the language to tell you what was happening, so you grew up assuming you were just sensitive. Too much, too intense for the people around you to handle. Now I want to walk you through some of what your spirit has actually been carrying without your knowledge, because once you see the list, you're going to understand why you've been so tired for so long. And you're going to understand why the version of rest the world offers has never quite worked for you. The first thing your spirit has been carrying is the weight of bloodlines. Some of you come from families with patterns: addiction, abandonment, infidelity, anger, religious abuse, generational poverty, generational silence about things that should have been spoken out loud generations ago. You looked at your family and you saw the same cycles repeating. And you knew, somewhere in your bones, that something had to stop the cycle. You didn't volunteer for that. Nobody asked you. But your spirit said yes anyway, somewhere in eternity past, before you ever entered that family line. You came in as the one who would carry the cycle into the light and refuse to pass it on. That's exhausting work, That's not a side project. That's a full-time assignment that runs underneath everything else you do. Every time you broke a pattern that your parents couldn't break. Every time you made a different choice than the one your bloodline trained you to make. Every time you refused to do to your kids what was done to you. You were doing the work your spirit signed up for. And you've been doing it for decades, without anyone calling it what it is. Think about the moments. The moment you almost yelled at your kid the way your parent yelled at you, and you caught yourself mid-sentence and chose a softer word. The moment you almost slammed the door the way the door was slammed on you, and you closed it gently instead. The moment you wanted to disappear from someone's life the way someone disappeared from yours, and you stayed. You stayed when leaving would have been easier. You stayed when the bloodline pattern was begging you to leave. You stayed and you absorbed the cost of staying, and you broke something old in the process that nobody clapped for and nobody noticed. Heaven noticed. Every one of those moments was an altar. You didn't know it. You thought you were just trying to be a decent person. You thought you were just trying not to be like the people who hurt you. But what you were actually doing was dismantling something that had been operating in your bloodline for generations, and you were dismantling it with your own hands, in your own life, without backup, without applause, without anyone telling you that what you were doing was holy work. Now you know. Now somebody has finally told you. The breaking of the pattern in your generation is one of the assignments you came here to complete. And every quiet moment when you chose differently than your parents chose, you were completing it. The second thing your spirit has been carrying is the weight of unspoken prayers. There are people in your life, and people far outside of it, who don't pray for themselves. They don't know how. They don't believe they're allowed to. They've walked too far from God to find the door back, in their own estimation. And so they live without that lifeline, and their lives crumble. And they don't even know that the small mercies that occasionally show up in their darkness are coming because somewhere, someone is carrying them. You're one of those someones. You've been praying for people you don't even like. You've been praying for people who hurt you. You've been praying for people you haven't seen in 20 years. Because their name will drop into your spirit at 3 in the afternoon while you're folding laundry. And you'll find yourself whispering their name before God, before you even know you started. That's not random. That's assignment. Heaven has been routing prayers through you that nobody else was willing to pray. And here's the part that's going to be hard to hear. Some of the people you've prayed for have absolutely no idea. They'll go to their graves never knowing that the reason their car didn't crash on that one Tuesday, the reason their daughter came home safe, the reason their addiction loosened its grip just enough to let them breathe was a prayer. Somebody else was praying for them in a kitchen somewhere while making dinner, without even knowing why their lips were moving. That's intercession. That's the cost. That's the carrying. And the strangest part is, you've been doing it without ever calling it intercession. You don't think of yourself as a prayer warrior. You'd be embarrassed if someone called you that out loud. The label doesn't fit who you think you are. But heaven doesn't go by the labels you're comfortable with. Heaven goes by what's actually happening. And what's actually happening is that you've been carrying more spiritual weight for more people than half the prayer rooms in this country combined. And you've been doing it quietly, almost invisibly, mostly while doing something else entirely. The third thing your spirit has been carrying is the weight of unborn outcomes. This one is harder to explain, so stay with me. There are futures that almost happened in your family, in your community, in your city, futures that would have been disasters that didn't happen because somebody was praying. Somebody was groaning. Somebody was carrying the weight of an unspoken intercession that bent the timeline. You've been one of those somebodies, and you don't get to see the outcomes you prevented. You only see the ones that happened. You don't see the car accident that didn't happen. You don't see the disease that didn't progress. You don't see the suicide that didn't go through. You don't see the marriage that didn't end on the night it almost did. Heaven keeps a book of those outcomes. Your name is in it more times than you'd believe. And one day, when you stand in the place where everything is finally revealed, you're going to see the full ledger of what your unconscious carrying actually accomplished. And you're going to weep, not because of the weight, but because you'll finally understand that the weight was always producing. The calling is wide. The instructions reach only a few. If there is a burning in your spirit right now, do not minimize it. That is the sign. The secret protocol delivers the 7 keys God reserved for those who are ready to unlock what was sealed inside them before birth. The full audiobook is included to absorb in depth, in your own time, in the presence of God. And the Awakening Map, the bonus guide, that reveals the 5 stages of spiritual awakening and positions you with precision at the exact point of your journey today. Link pinned in the first comment. For a limited time only, because not every door stays open forever. Now I want to come back and walk through the next layers of what you've been carrying, because we're only halfway through. The 4th thing your spirit has been carrying is the weight of being misread by the people closest to you. Some of you are reading this right now and realizing that your own family has never actually seen you. They've seen a version of you. They've seen the role you played in the family dynamic. They've seen the labels they assigned to you when you were 8 years old and never updated. But they've never seen the spirit inside the body. They've never seen the weight you've been carrying. They've never had a category for who you actually are. And so you've spent your whole life translating yourself into something they could understand. You've trimmed your sentences. You've left out the parts that would have unsettled them. You've shown up to family gatherings and played the role they expected, because the alternative, being fully yourself in front of people who don't have eyes to see you, was too exhausting to attempt. That translation work is a cost too. It's a quiet, invisible cost, but it's real, and it's been bleeding energy out of you for years. You know the loneliest kind of loneliness? It's not being alone. It's being in a room full of people who share your last name and not having a single one of them know who you actually are. Sitting at a table, hearing them talk about you in the 3rd person while you're sitting right there, and realizing they're describing a person who hasn't existed for 20 years. Watching them assign motives to you that you don't have. Watching them assume things about your inner life that aren't even close to the truth. And realizing, slowly, over years, that the people you would have most wanted to see you are the exact people who lost the ability to see you the longest time ago. That's a specific kind of grief. It doesn't go away just because you stop expecting them to change. Some of you have done the maturity work of releasing the expectation, and you still feel the grief, because the grief was never about expectation. The grief was about absence. The grief was about being a soul that needed to be witnessed, and nobody in your origin story was equipped to witness you. Your spirit has been carrying that grief in the background of every family event you've attended for the last 40 years. That's part of why family gatherings exhaust you in ways that other gatherings don't. You're not introverted. You're not antisocial. You're carrying the weight of being unseen in the very rooms that should have seen you first. The 5th thing your spirit has been carrying is the weight of the future hidden in your assignment. Some of you have a future that doesn't look like the futures around you. You're going to do something, or say something, or build something, or birth something, and the something is going to outlive you in ways your current life doesn't hint at. Heaven knows what it is. Your spirit knows what it is. And somewhere between the two of them, there's a preloaded weight that's been sitting on you for a long time, because the weight of an assignment shows up in the spirit before the assignment shows up in the natural. That's why you're tired in a way your life doesn't justify. When people look at your actual life, your job, your house, your responsibilities, they don't see anything that would explain the level of exhaustion you carry. So they conclude you must be lazy, or weak, or making excuses. They don't realize that the exhaustion isn't coming from your visible life. It's coming from the invisible weight of a future that's pressing against your present, waiting for the door to open. The greater the assignment up ahead, the heavier the preload. And some of you are carrying assignments so significant that the weight of them has been crushing you in advance. Once the assignment opens, the weight becomes usable. It becomes fuel. It becomes the very thing that carries the assignment forward. But until then, it just feels like exhaustion you can't explain. Until then, it looks like depression that doesn't respond to anything. Until then, it just sits on you, day after day, and you wonder when it's going to lift. I want to tell you something about the lifting. The lifting only fully happens when you start cooperating with what your spirit is already doing. The lifting doesn't come from making the carrying stop. The carrying isn't going to stop. The carrying is your design. The lifting comes from naming the carrying out loud, agreeing with what your spirit has been doing without your permission, and finally bringing your conscious mind into partnership with the assignment. Heaven has been running through you all along. That's the shift. That's the moment things change. Once you say, out loud, in a quiet room, yes, this is what I am. Yes, this is what I've been carrying. Yes, I accept the assignment that was placed on me. Before I had words, something in the spirit realm aligns. The weight doesn't disappear, but it stops being a burden and starts being a calling. The difference is enormous. The carrying becomes the work instead of being the resistance to the work. I want to tell you what happens to people who never make that shift, because some of you are afraid of what this video is asking of you, and I want to be honest about both sides. The chosen ones who never align with what their spirit was carrying spend their whole lives feeling broken. They go to doctors, they go to therapists, they try medications, they try every wellness trend that comes along. They search and search and search, and nothing ever quite works, because they're looking for a solution to a problem that was never a problem. They were trying to fix what was never broken. They were trying to silence what was never meant to be silenced. They were carrying a calling and calling it a curse. You don't have to be one of them. You can do the harder thing tonight, which is also the easier thing. Depending on how you look at it, you can stop fighting the weight. You can stop apologizing for the intensity. You can stop trying to be the lighter version of yourself that the people around you would prefer. You can finally accept that what's inside of you is not a problem to be solved. It's a calling to be honored. And the moment you honor it, the very thing that's been crushing you starts to organize itself. The weight becomes purposeful. The exhaustion starts to make sense. The grief that didn't belong to you starts to flow somewhere useful, instead of just sitting in your chest with nowhere to go. That's the gift inside the carrying. The carrying is the calling. The calling is the gift. The gift is the very thing you've been trying to put down for years. And the moment you stop trying to put it down and start asking it what it wants from you, your whole life reorganizes around the answer. I want to leave you with one last image before I let you go, because some of you need this image more than anything else I've said in the last several minutes. In the book of Revelation, when the 144,000 are described, they are standing, not lying down, not collapsed, standing, with a song on their lips that nobody else can learn, with a mark on their foreheads that nobody else can wear, with a position in the kingdom that nobody else can occupy. That standing is your future. You've spent so long doing the carrying with your back bent that you can't imagine yourself standing upright in the assignment. But standing is what's coming. The bent posture was for the long descent. The bent posture was for the season when nobody knew who you were. The bent posture was for the years of invisible work, the unspoken prayers, the bloodline patterns, the future weight pressing on the present. The standing is for what's next. And the standing comes when you stop calling yourself broken and start calling yourself by the name. Heaven has already been calling you by for as long as you've existed. One of the 144,000. Now I'm going to ask you something specific in the comments, and I want you to take it seriously. Out of everything I said tonight, the bloodlines, the unspoken prayers, the unborn outcomes, the misreading by your own family, the future hidden in your assignment, the carrying that started in childhood. I want you to tell me which one explained your life back to you, not which one was most interesting, not which one sounded the most spiritual. The one that, when I described it, you felt your stomach drop. The one that named something you've been feeling for 30 years and never had words for. Pick the one, write it. One sentence is enough. Because somebody else in this comment section is still reading these words and thinking, None of this could be me. I'm not that important. I'm not that chosen. And your one sentence, your honest admission that something I named hit you in the place nothing else has ever hit, is going to be the moment that other person realizes they're not alone in the carrying. That's how chosen ones find each other in this generation. Not through ceremony, not through credentials. One comment at a time, one named weight at a time. One spirit raising its hand and saying, yes, that one. That's the one. That's mine. Raise yours.